This is Anthony Pascal.
And this is Laurie Elster, and this is the All Access Star Trek podcast. Today, we are going to be reviewing the Lower Decks episode called Upper Decks. We are also going to be playing the interview I did with the very boisterous and exuberant Jerry O'Connell. But first, we're going to do some news, and we're going to start with Saturn Award nominations. A very different amount of awards from last year.
Well, the awards don't happen till February, but last year I think they had like 15 nominations or something.
14 or 15, somewhere in that range.
Now, part of that was because 3 shows were eligible. Strange New Worlds was also eligible.
Picard Season 3
was getting, TNG got a special award. There was a TOS movie box set that was nominated. This year, Discovery and Lower Decks were nominated for Best Sci-Fi Show and Best Animated Show, respectively. What we're not seeing is any acting nominations, which has been unusual in both the recent era and in earlier eras of Star Trek. I don't think we've ever seen a year where Star Trek was on TV and the Saturn Awards only had 2 nominations.
Yeah, that's true.
Even like the first season of Discovery, I think had 4 or 5 nominations. Doug Jones won, so it's a light year for the Saturn Awards. I think these are deserved. There's good competition. I doubt either show will win.
Yeah, they're up against a lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
Like 3 Body Problem.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that, but I think that show might have been difficult for some people.
Well, I really enjoyed it, but I feel like I need to watch it all over again.
Fallout is just a fantastic show. So it's, Dark Matter's solid, so it's some good stuff in there. I bet the X-Men animated show wins as well, because that seems to have a lot of buzz around it. And the Batman one's pretty good too, actually.
Right. Well, so is Star Trek, damn it.
No, I would love to see Lower Decks win. I think it's better than all of this on the animated side. I'm just kind of, handicapping, as it were. So let's move on to some news bits from upcoming projects. We have like little bits from upcoming projects. Tiny
wee bits.
The Section 31 movie, Paramount released this kind of history of Section 31 video. It just, it had clips from all the times we've seen Section 31. And they tried it, like there's this narration that tries to weave it into a cohesive story when it's not.
Yeah, it's really hard to do. I applaud them for the effort.
Right, like it was secret and then it wasn't and then it was again. And, so they're trying to imply like why everyone knew what it was in the 23rd century and then everyone forgot what it was in the 24th. And, fair enough. It's worth checking out, but I think they're waiting for Lower Decks to wrap up and then they're going to ramp up Section 31 promo stuff again. I'm wondering if we're going to get a trailer for it the finale week of Lower Decks, which would be in a couple of weeks.
No, that would make sense in a couple of weeks, yeah. But I'm glad that they are looking at Section 31 as not a thing that was invented for this movie.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that they're looking at it within the context. They should have thrown some clips in from the movie just to, spice it up a little bit, but still, it's something.
Yeah, it's something. We also had, it's not even news, but just something fun around the Starfleet Academy show, which is that Robert Picardo and Paul Giamatti, they came to New York for Thanksgiving weekend, it seems. They took a bunch of pictures around town. They went to the opera. They had a very good time. And Picardo called Giamatti's character a supervillain and said he's going to be memorable, I assure you. So,
I think people glommed onto the phrase supervillain and,
got crazy. Like, we don't need a supervillain. I'm like, he's just excited that he has a villain being played by Paul Giamatti, who he's clearly enjoying spending time with.
I love Paul Giamatti, and it will be curious to see how he plays the character, how broad he goes, because Giamatti can go very broad. If you saw his performance in Planet of the Apes, which was not a good movie. This is the Tim Burton one from the 2000s that everyone likes to forget, but he's fantastic in it. So and he's fantastic in many things, but I could see him going very broad, maybe even camping it up. So but it's up to the directors and the producers, I guess, as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how he's going to play it. He certainly knows that because he's a big fan. So the trick to being a good Star Trek guest star is really going all. You have to go all in to whatever insane concept they've given you.
In these pictures, Giamatti's got a big bushy beard, so you can't hide that with prosthetics. So the character, but that eliminates certain character. Like he just, I don't know, probably not an alien now. Maybe he's.
Aliens can have beards.
Some aliens can have beards, but I don't know. It just didn't look like the kind of beard a Klingon would have. I don't know.
I don't think he's going to be a Klingon.
I'm betting he's a human, but we'll see.
Maybe he just asked for like something on his nose, or just a little something. I can imagine him wanting a little something, something.
Yeah, because he's wanted to do that.
Yeah, we're just talking like we know him, like he's our friend. We think that Paul would like this.
I am looking. I mean, someday we're going to interview Paul Giamatti, which is
and
exciting.
Holly Hunter.
Yeah, and yeah. So
my mind is exploding. All right. Well, next up, we got a little update from Tawny Newsome about the live-action Star Trek comedy series that she and Justin Simien have been working on. She can't share much, but she said, basically, she's saying they told her to keep going. So they didn't say shut down your computer and go home. So they are still working on it. And she is loving doing it.
Which means, they don't have a green light.
Right.
Kurtzman has a development budget where he could just spend money. So he could pay them to write things just out of his, petty cash, essentially, that they give him for development money. But the show has no budget. The show doesn't exist and may never exist until Paramount gives it a green light. And, that I don't see that happening until next year at the earliest.
Yeah, well, we're almost at the end of this year.
Yeah, it's going to be about mid-year before the new team comes in. I should probably do an update because we're starting to learn some stuff about that, about who's leaving Paramount, who's going to stay when Skydance takes over. They're looking to consolidate all the TV stuff into one group, perhaps, that could have an impact on Star Trek. It's more behind-the-scenes stuff, but it's going to be big next year. Corporate stuff could have a big impact on the franchise, and we don't know which way the wind's going to blow on that one.
Well, hopefully it'll blow towards Tony's show.
Indeed. And other possible shows. One little update we got from the, almost defunct Star Trek magazine was an interview with Michael Dorn, and he talked about, it's like, are you, potentially, are we going to play Worf again? I don't know. The way he talked about it, it doesn't seem like it's going to happen. And he said something interesting, which is he said he's essentially retiring from acting in general.
Yeah, that he's still interested in pursuing projects as a writer, but he's not on the, he said, I'm not on the treadmill anymore or something like that.
Yeah, he's not doing auditions anymore. Although he was in the latest episode of a animated show I like called Crapopolis, which is Dan Harmon's latest show.
He probably did not have to audition.
Probably did not. Still, I don't think we'll ever see him play Worf again. That's my bet. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think the time for Legacy has come and gone.
Yeah.
So I hate to say it. And I hope I'm wrong.
I hope we're all wrong. So
but it seems like that wind, speaking of blowing winds, that wind has blown away.
Yeah, I still think there's a possibility they throw Terry a TV movie and maybe we see everyone one more time briefly. But who knows? Yeah,
he's booked for the next little while.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Speaking of potential shows, at Fan Expo San Francisco last weekend, Kate Mulgrew's asked, she's always asked, are you going to play Janeway again? But this was an interesting, the way this question was framed, it was like Star Trek Picard, existed, and the guy who asked the question said, and it did, if people liked it, could we see Janeway have her own show like that? And Mulgrew we've heard her talk. In fact, you interviewed her. She's talked about how precious the character is before and how difficult it would be to get it just right. But what I thought was interesting is how she worded this was, it didn't sound theoretical. It sounded like she's been pitched something and it didn't have what she wanted, the way she phrased it. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, so she said it would have to be so good, and I'm not sure it has all of the elements that I would need to have.
Yeah, so what's the it is doing a lot of...
Yes.
But what is the it she's talking about? And it sounds like the it is, because she earlier, she said, yes, I've talked to Alex Kurtzman. Of course, he's talked to me about it. So
right.
So there's been discussions now, how formal of a pitch it was, but there's something that she feels isn't enough. And but then what was interesting is she then returned to the questioner to say, and I'm not sure you're right about Picard. She said she's never seen the show, but she knew it had mixed reviews, which is true.
And she said she couldn't bear it if Janeway, the character, was disparaged in any way. Look, I'm sure I'm not surprised she didn't see Picard, but I bet she read a review or two.
Of course.
Yeah.
Now, third season has a whole different vibe, obviously. But for a couple seasons, the show definitely had mixed reviews, especially season 2. And there's no way she didn't notice that. But this sort of reminds me of what we heard from Jerry recently, of how there was a pitch to her and how did she phrase it? It just wasn't me.
Yep.
So one thing is, at the same moment, they aren't doing Legacy. They're pitching 2 different shows to 2 different Voyager actresses. Here's a thought. What if that's the same thing? Yeah.
Well, that's maybe why they both said no.
Exactly.
I mean, they get along fine now, and there have been apologies. Kate apologized. So
everything makes a lot more sense if you envision there's one pitch and it's, a buddy cop show with the 2 of them, and they're like, no.
With the 2 of them starring. It just reminds me of when I interviewed her and I foolishly said, would you need to be the star of it? And the look she gave me was like, are you an idiot?
Exactly.
And she laughed when I made fun of myself for asking the question.
Yeah. Now, this is all speculation, of course.
Yeah, we're just riffing. We don't know.
Yeah.
But it does ask the question, doesn't it?
It does. I think that's kind of, we've covered the news. There you go, folks. You are fully informed.
You know everything you need to know.
So let's talk some lower decks, upper decks.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, I'm sure everyone gets this, but Lower Decks was the whole idea of the show came from Mike McMahon, inspired by the episode Lower Decks of Next Generation, which he brought back kind of in at the end of last season with the Sato characters connected to Mariner. So there's already a Lower Decks connection. But now he's gone full meta by doing his version of Lower Decks, which is reversing the idea. And so it's Upper Decks. I thought the poetry of that. I really enjoy the poetry of that, I guess.
Yeah, so did I. I thought it was a nice spin on that original episode of Next Gen. And just a look at the idea that everyone thinks they are the star of their own show because they are. I mean, you are the star of your own show.
Yeah.
Which everybody is. But in this case, they also star in a show, so it's very meta. But just the idea that they think that the bridge crew is doing nothing.
And or whatever they're doing, it's boring.
It's paperwork and meetings and stuff like that, while they're actually, doing all kinds of interesting things.
And even in this episode, there is an element of that, if you look at the captain's schedule. But they kind of made the point of her schedule where she kind of goes around the ship and meets with different crew members doing different things, one-man shows, fertility events, that kind of stuff.
Fertility events.
That it's important. And she was even willing to stick to that schedule and forego her call with her husband for her anniversary because she thought, the captain's connection to the crew is so important. So, it was boring for a reason. Now, I very much enjoyed the episode. I think there's certainly an element of we've only got 3 left,
I know. I feel like it makes people look at this episode perhaps unfairly as I do, because I'm like, well, we've only got a few left. So this, my expectations are very different. And so like, there's nothing wrong with this episode. It's good. It's funny. It made me laugh, but, it just didn't feel like, oh my God, we're only a few episodes away from the end.
It's your typical bottle show. They're saving money for the finale. And as Barry Kelly said in my interview last week, or was it your interview? One of us interviewed him.
Yeah, one of us did it.
He's like, the finale is basically a 2-episode finale. So this is the pause before the storm. But one thing I liked is if you notice the end credits, you look at the list of guest stars, and this had so many of them. But I went through the list. Every single one of them has been on the show before. It's basically the stable that they've been building up. Some of their names are more familiar than others, like Nolan North and stuff like that. But they have this great stable of voice actors and comedians and stuff that they're friends of theirs and whatever. And they're all so talented. And they brought them all back. And I mean, some of them like are playing characters they've played before. That's part of the fun of this episode. It's not just the lower deckers. It's people like Karavitas and Castros and,
Westlake.
Yeah. He was very interesting. Like, I don't remember him being as campy as he was.
Right. So I looked him up because I thought, I don't remember him even having much of a personality. Like, I feel like he's someone he was more talked about than actually did anything. This was the first time he had personality. And boy, did he have personality. He's very sassy.
I mean, it makes sense in that Dr. Tana would need someone who's, got a lot going on, got a lot of confidence on their own, doesn't really put up with her shit. And she kind of likes that. I mean, obviously she likes that. That's, so no, that was but it was great to, that's the thing. Like, we're filling out, as we head to the finish line.
Yeah.
We're filling out some of these minor characters, but we're learning more about Shax, and I think we learned how he got his eye scar, right? That was in that battle, he threw the thing and it exploded and that scarred his eye.
And I was also wondering, is he having all these visions because he died? The mystery of...
No, I don't think he died, but I think that
he died a long time. He died before, remember?
Yeah, but I think he's had these haunting visions since. I think the thing that he threw was some kind of Bajoran mystical object that exploded, and somehow he was infected with some kind of mystical woo-woo Bajoran something. I don't know.
Huh.
Doesn't matter, really. It could just all be in his head, right?
Yes. But I'm wondering if it is because no one was allowed to speak of the fact that he died and came back.
Yes. But he kind of implied that this preceded his death. I think he's been haunted by this younger version of himself for years. And then Miglomo at the end. Miglomo didn't get a story. I was kind of sad about that, but he had a B story earlier in the season.
Yes.
So he didn't get much.
You don't need big. He's great in perfect small doses.
But he's gonna Shax and he are gonna have some off screen.
Shax is like, when can we start? And slamming on the table. I mean, the main thing about this episode for me is that, like, my section on best lines and jokes and funniest bits is longer than any of my sections about characters or plots. Like, it was chock full of funny moments.
Oh, the plot was terrible. I mean, there was no plot, or not terrible. I mean, it was just it was super thin. It was almost it was paper thin,
wafer thin.
But it was funny how the bad guys were the Clickets, and I forgot they existed. But when he said, we've encountered you before, I was like, I had to go to Memory Alpha. And I'm like, oh, there they, oh, right. They were in that episode.
Those guys. I like when she said to him, your face fell off. Do you need medical assistance? And coincidentally and embarrassingly, I've been rewatching all of the miniseries from the 80s, which constantly has people tearing off parts of their face to reveal lizard scales underneath. Yeah. So it was good timing.
But their whole over the top thing, and the fact that you must have remembered the bit about the compliments. I mean, maybe because we pay close attention to these episodes, but as soon as they revealed the Clickets, I'm like, oh, well, all she has to do is compliment this guy. And
which she was so good at.
Yeah.
Her compliments were excellent.
It took her a while to remember that, though. She could have saved a lot of trouble earlier on, but luckily she had Barnes, another kind of minor character, got to step up. Cave woman version of Barnes.
Futuristic cave woman. Who could read minds but was afraid of open flames.
Yeah, it's all about these minor characters, and all of them got, there's some great lines. And again, this guest cast was allowed to really shine. I almost feel like you could have had even less of our core four.
No, there was so little of them.
It doesn't make sense, by the way, but again, because it's the thin plot, who cares, that they were unaware that the ship was boarded. The one line that they threw in there was the infiltrators only targeted the senior officers.
Right.
But no one ever called red alert. They would have noticed that the ship was boarded.
Well, no one did. We didn't see anyone calling red alert, and they were just sitting there decorating pumpkins.
I know. That's
and describing being trapped in a painting, which sounds so fun.
And it allowed the gag of when they said, "Oh, nothing ever happens," and then behind them you could see the Clickets and the space cows.
Yeah,
and one Clicket's got the sousaphone over his head. Yeah, it all reinforced the point that they have an inflated sense of themselves. The lower deckers, as it were. Yeah. That's the thing of it's not worth overthinking any of these things because this is just an episode to have funny lines. I mean, I thought my favorite parts was the stuff in maybe not favorite, but I love the stuff in engineering with Meredith and Phillips. And the Clickets never even made it to engineering. They had their own kind of situation going on with it, just a series of escalating engineering crises to keep the ship from blowing up.
Yep. But, all engineers want to go at work in a tube. I just liked how much he loves engineering.
Oh, yeah.
That's all of our chief engineers just love it. And it's great.
And we learned that he's got a whole bunch of stuff going on in engineering that is a little sketchy, like he's buying secondhand parts from binars, which have weird functionality, and he's jerry-rigged a bunch of stuff. And I mean, that's the thing of only on a show like this. And I love that when the golem comes out of the wall, the only way to deactivate it is he needed to hold the reset button while telling a story expressing human emotion.
A sad story from her childhood that demonstrates human emotion and then gets told, not sad enough.
But I love how she doesn't even question it. She immediately starts with the story about her dad, and then that wasn't enough, so she was quite the trooper through that whole thing.
Yep.
It's a collection of moments. It's almost one of those things, an anthology where there's 50 stories on the USS Cerritos.
Right.
They almost maybe shouldn't have had the Clicket story. They shouldn't have had anything tying them together. Everyone should have had their own little thing going on. Perhaps. Yeah,
without the Clickets, though, we would never heard Carol say, "I'm impressed with your whole vibe." So we did want that. But yeah, no, it would have been an interesting episode to just do like The Simpsons did, just do little vignettes of different people.
Right. And that's what I was thinking about the Simpson episode, the 22 short stories with all the kind of minor characters. They could have done that easily without
that would have
tying too much together. But still it's not really that's just a creative choice.
Yes. But I think it was a good episode. It's just the timing of it.
Yeah,
but it's very funny. My list of jokes is long. My list of lines is long. I enjoyed each character story. I did really enjoy Freeman in this one. She was extra fun.
Yeah, it's like when I was reviewing it, I'm like, who do I want to call out as being the standout character and actor? And I realized I couldn't, because she was great.
Ransom was really funny.
Yeah. And I do like the angle of that the Ransom persona is that there's a more calculation going on there behind the persona. He isn't a doofus. I mean, I never really thought he was a doofus, he knows what he's doing. Yeah, he's into lifting. But,
yeah, and he's vain. He's very vain.
Yeah, but he's self-aware and he's a good commander. And so, no, they're all, I mean, I always loved Dr. Tana. The whole thing about how like she can't feel pain seemed a little out of left field, but I went with it, I guess.
Yeah, and I liked her pain chart that just had two options: I feel good and other. I don't think I have anything else. I mean, I don't want to read all the funny lines. You heard them. You watched it.
Let me ask you this though, for like random stuff. I mean, because there were, so this episode, one of the things it does is it's not heavy references to Star Trek as much as self-referential stuff. They brought back Winger Bingston. He does his own one-man show. It's all sorts of stuff. And as we said, the Clickets were a callback themselves. There was, though, a mention of the hyposprays when Nurse Westlake says, "We're good to go for the next time a virus makes everyone sing," or whatever.
Yes.
And do you think that was a specific Strange New Worlds gag?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
For sure.
It's because looking at the timing of this, yeah, it makes sense because this was I think this was being written during the summer when season 2 of Strange New Worlds was out, and they get those scripts in advance anyway.
Yeah, they know about it.
Yeah, they knew it was coming. So yeah,
yeah, and there was there were still Easter eggs and references, and like Geordie and Roe wandering alone, things like that.
I mean, the show often there's things that happen on the show that aren't just references to Star Trek, but make it feel like these characters watched episodes of Star Trek. Not only do they mention episode names sometimes, but when she mocks the way, the V'ger talked, like
that was good.
But how would she know that? And then what it makes you think is, I guess within this universe, they made a movie out of the V'ger, like there was a in-universe version of Star Trek the Motion Picture. There's some actor played Kirk and someone played V'ger,
that's your headcanon, but
that's my headcanon. Well, because Mariner has made movies too, like she made her version of Wrath of Khan, kind of,
Yes.
Sometimes you need a little headcanon to keep yourself going.
Yeah. I get it. And you must have also enjoyed Dr. Tana purring when she was being patted on the head.
Yes, of course. So it shows you the special relationship that they have, the little smile she has there.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't have anything to say except I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, it's a solid, it's an interesting question of if they did this just in season 4, I think. But then there's the question of would they have done this? Like, did they do this as a last hurrah for everyone else to give them one last go and to kind of do some, a collection of B stories that they've never had a chance to do, or C stories? Or is this something they always wanted to do anyway? I don't know. It's a good question.
We'll find out because we'll get Mike on here and we'll ask him. Yeah.
No, still no mention of who's behind the space fizges.
The fizz.
Right? The fizz. They've gone the lightest touch for a while, but I'm sure that's coming back next week.
Yeah, yes. I
don't know it, but based on certainly what Barry said of how they kind of, the final 2 episodes are structured, I think that's all that we're going to get for 2 episodes, which is great.
Yeah, it's time.
And then it's over.
All right, well, I think we should play the interview I did with the crazy, wild Jerry O'Connell, who just came bursting through the Zoom screen to say how much he loves Trek movie, which was very nice and appreciates our support. But he was just nuts. Like as you will hear, I was halfway through my first question before I got to the question-y bit of it, and he just started answering. So, he's at one point I was trying to say, "Well, hold something." He interrupts to say, "Don't hold anything." So he was nuts and fun. And I just kept thinking, like, I bet he is the most fun dad.
Oh yeah.
They have twin girls and I bet they have so much fun with him.
Let's take a listen.
Hello. How are you?
Laurie, what's up?
How are you?
Trek movie. Thank you for all your support these last few years. We couldn't have come 5 seasons without you. Really appreciate you. I mean that.
We love the show a ton. So we review it every week on the podcast, and it's just a lot of laughing. It's just a lot of laughing.
We're really appreciative. Thank you for everything.
Great. Well, thank you. So here's my first question. When you got the script for this latest episode, we won't release this interview until after the episode.
Well, you can do it. You can release it whenever you want.
Well,
when I got
we
the
can't.
script for this, I thought, finally, we're getting on the bridge. It's about time. I know the show is called Lower Decks, but let's be real. Star Trek is all about what goes on the bridge. That's where the real decisions are made. That's where the grown-ups are. Everyone wants to be on the bridge. That's where the action is. I understand Lower Decks is about the shenanigans that happen in the lower decks. By the way, they have to sleep like 4 to a bunk, whatevs. It's on the bridge. Get us to the bridge. That's what it's all about. It's about time. You're welcome.
Okay, well that covers that question perfectly. In this episode, we saw that Ransom he's been using his jock persona to sort of be an act. And so my question is is that how you've been playing him throughout? And what is your sort of take on him as a good officer versus a vain guy?
It's funny. It's an incredible character that Mike McMahon created for me. Mike McMahon has a really funny take on it. He's a little part Riker, he's a little part Magnum or something. He's got a funny take on it. He's a little part Riker, he's a little part he's got a funny take on it. But I am really inspired by Jonathan Frakes. I mean, I did take a lot from him. But it's interesting. It's such a fun character to play because I can play everything with this bravado and this machismo, and he rips his shirt off, and he's this first officer in Starfleet, and he's a stud, and blah, blah, blah. But really, his true allegiance is just to Starfleet. And because Starfleet is bigger than all of us, it humbles him. So it's a fun character to play because on the surface, he is this sort of alpha leader. Follow me, lower deckers. I'll show you the way. But at the same time, he's a humble servant. He's a humble servant of Starfleet. So it's one of the deepest characters that I've ever gotten to play. And, it's been it's been an honor.
Well, did you look when you read this episode and started recording for it? Did it shift how you think about him? Because he kind of says he's been acting a certain way to, unite the lower deckers against him.
Did it shift? I don't think it shifted my performance. Because I think I always, Mike always sort of let me know this is who this guy is. I just thought it was great writing, and you'd have to ask Mike about this, but from where I sit, Mike just doesn't write comedy. He doesn't just write, a Starfleet funny animated show. He writes for the characters. And that's when I think Star Trek is at its best, is when it's writing for characters who happen to be in Starfleet. That's why Lower Decks is such a good show. It's not, it's not just joke, call back to TNG, joke, call back to Deep Space Nine. It's deeper than that.
Yeah. Well, this season, sadly the final one, although everyone's holding out hope for something else.
You never know. Come on. I
know. I agree. There's room.
Haven't other animated shows gotten picked up? Come on.
Yeah, there's room.
But now we're on Paramount Plus. We're very proud of this last season. We're very excited.
Yeah.
And there's no sadness. There's never a goodbye.
But the season started with all the characters meeting their alternate selves, and they all we as the audience, we got a takeaway about each character based on that, and it also kind of set off some of them on paths for the season. So what's your take on Ransom and his double? Like, what did he get from that, and what did that show about him?
Okay, listen, I don't know if you or your viewers/readers are familiar with this, but I starred in a little science fiction show in the 90s called Sliders.
Oh, well versed.
Which dealt with parallel universes. Some would argue one of the first network television shows to deal with parallel universes. Whatever, I don't want to say I'm like one of the four figures of parallel universes, but let me just put it this way. I have experience. Okay. I have a lot more experience than all these other kids that are on lower decks. I said to them, guys, I was on Sliders. If you have any questions, come to me. It's okay. I've been here. Come to me. I know all about parallel universes. You know what's funny is, I mean, jokingly, I have played other versions of myself in Sliders, so I was familiar with this. But Mike McMahon had very specific ideas for what I can't speak for the other actors, but very specific ideas for what Mike other Ransom was, and it was a little more subtle. Maybe I'm just a little more broad and on the nose, and you know, I got to tell you, Mike McMahon has really helped my parallel universe acting. And that is the thing, everybody. I'm telling you. I was in Sliders. I'm an expert. I'm officially a parallel universe expert. Between Sliders and Lower Deck season 5, I am a frigging expert in parallel universes. And Mike McMahon did have me take it down a notch. And I'm appreciative of it. I was a little on the nose. Listen, last time I was doing parallel universes, it was the 90s. It was Fox. I had to follow X-Files. I had to make my mark. Maybe it was a little much, but I think Mike McMahon got me to a good place.
Agreed.
That is the best question I've gotten so far. That really made me laugh.
How much do you improvise?
Do you believe I'm an expert on parallel universes?
I watched a lot of Sliders, dude. And a lot of Star Trek.
Let's get a remake of it. Come on, Universal. I mean, I realize this is for Paramount Plus, but it's on another streaming service, and I called them. They never called me back. Come on.
Bastards.
Let's go.
Yeah. So how much do you improvise when you're doing Ransom's dialogue?
And I improvise quite a bit. I improvise quite a bit. And I'll be honest with you, I don't remember what makes it and what doesn't make it. I don't, by the time I see it, I don't even remember. I have to say, our recording sessions on Lower Decks are so funny. Mike McMahon, the whole writing staff that I'll never forget. I think it was first season. I read one of the scripts. I'm sorry, they're all like sort of like coming together. I swear I'm not high. But it was something where like the Cerritos was sent to blow up a moon. And I remember I was working with one of the writers and Mike McMahon, and they were like, yeah, you know, blah, 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 and then you're going to blow up the moon. And I was like, oh, okay. Right. Any reason why is there like, and I was like asking, like, cause we got the scripts like just one at a time. I was like, is there any significance as to why we're blowing up this moon? Is this going to come back? And they looked at each other and went, no, we just thought it'd be cool to blow up a moon. And it's just like, who else in Starfleet who are writing these things is going to be like, yeah, no, there's no significance. We thought it'd be cool to blow up a moon. Isn't that kind of cool? It is kind of cool.
Yeah, it is.
Blow up the moon.
All right, here's
So it's just been making me laugh for 5 seasons.
Same. Final question. How would you contrast the styles of First Officer Ransom and First Officer Una?
Yeah. How are they different? What a great question. Well, this isn't a spoiler, but Ransom isn't lying about being an Alarian. Okay, so he's not lying on his application. Let's just put it that way. Spoiler alert if you haven't watched
I've watched
Strange New World season 2.
Yeah.
I think it's season 1, season 2.
Both.
Yeah. So Ransom didn't lie on his application. That's sort of a biggie in Starfleet. Ransom,
like, would they get along if they met? If there was a crossover and they met?
Listen, we don't judge people physically here in Starfleet, but I think Ransom will get along with Chin Riley. He would like her a lot.
I should hope so.
He's into Alarians.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jerry.
Thanks so much. Thanks for all your
Rachel.
support over the years. I really appreciate you. Trek movies, you've been so nice, and it's been so fun.
Well, that was a lot of fun. I don't know if we got any news out of that.
No, I don't think we did.
But we will be posting that. Our listeners get to hear it first. We'll be posting that as an interview on the site. But some of the stuff may not translate well to text because he's being sarcastic, like when he's talking about sliders and stuff like that. There's you could hear the sarcasm, which doesn't, which is
right, and he would repeat himself for humor and emphasis, but I didn't put all the repeats in you won't see them all written out over and over again. He's just fun to listen to. I enjoyed talking to him for sure. He's a nut.
And hopefully someday we get to see Ransom and Una together on screen.
Yes, which obviously they would both enjoy.
I kind of like the idea of Ransom's like really into her, but she's not into him or something like that. Like, you need to create some tension there. It can't just be love at first sight, right?
Maybe.
But eventually.
He doesn't seem like the kind of person she would be into.
No. He'll figure it out.
Yes.
All right. We're not going to do bits this week. Jerry was our bits. But we'll be back next week with the penultimate episode of Lower Decks.
See you then.